Okay, we're on, we're ready.
County City Council for December 14th, 2020 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozeski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford,
Here.
Mrs. McVoy,
She was in works.
Angel, you're still on mute.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Present.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams,
Here.
Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Here.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to approval of the meeting minutes for November 23rd, 2020. Are there any alterations or corrections? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Mosio. Is there a second?
I second.
I'll second.
Who was first on that one?
Tammy.
Tammy Ledford.
Thank you. Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy, Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for November 23rd have been approved. We do have an awards presentation tonight, and with us here in council chambers, we have Destiny Sharp and her family. And if you'd like to come forward. So Con, if you could read the certificate into the record.
Certificate of Achievement Spartan of the Month. The Spartan of the Month for December is Destiny Sharp. Destiny is a 9th grade student at Conneaut High School. Her nominating teacher, Mrs. Suzanne Nellis, wrote, "Destiny has logged in on all of her off days during class periods for extra help, including Monday. She is doing all she can to be successful. Her initiative to keep up with learning during this remote time is refreshing, and even to go above and beyond to get the extra help makes her an excellent example of a Spartan. The beginning of the year, she struggled with classwork and ended up getting completely caught up, and she showed her dependable side by turning in work in a timely fashion. She is friendly and kind to other students and respectful and courteous to adults. Destiny exhibits those qualities that make her a representative of what it means to be a true Spartan." Signed, John Arcaro, Council President, and Terry Moiseo, Council Person.
Okay, congratulations. We have a certificate for you. And Mr. Mosio has something for you.
Congratulations.
You're welcome. Would you like to introduce your family here?
Mom and Dad, and over there is Jamie, her oldest sister, her two younger brothers, Deegan and Patrick.
Okay, very good. And who's this guy hiding in the back here?
Destiny.
Would you like to say anything? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Well, thank you
Okay,
guys.
well, congratulations once again.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good night.
Night.
Happy holidays.
Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments this evening?
Excuse me.
Okay, if not, communications.
I don't have any this evening.
Does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports for our administration, beginning with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. I just have a couple quick updates for you this evening. As you know, we've spent a lot of time together going over to the capital budgets and operation budgets for 2021. I want to thank all the members of council for their additional work on that, and I want to especially thank Mr. Williams for his hard work on the 21 budget. So that is sincerely appreciated, and hopefully we get off to a better 2021 than 2020. So we can only go up, right? We have also started our kickoff meetings with the U.S. Department of Transportation, MARAD, which is the Maritime Administration, regarding the port infrastructure grant that the city received. I have also moved to the Executive Committee of Growth Partnership. We rotate amongst the three cities, so this is my year on the Executive Committee. So I've begun participating in those meetings. I've also offered the city's Zoom license so we can use Zoom to see each other rather than the teleconference calls. I find them to be far more efficient. And then Ashtabula County Commissioners Visitors Bureau, I'm remaining on that board as well. And hopefully we see a much brighter 2021 in the hospitality industry. We're somewhat projecting that 2020 was not as terrible as we all hoped. It finished very strong. Some of our late season months, such as July and August, finished at about 95% of the prior year. So that was very refreshing to see kind of a strong showing in late summer. Obviously with the hope of a vaccine and some normalization in 2021, those numbers will continue to recover, not just in hospitality, but across the board. So we'll see. I have spent some time with our elected representatives. We are in a lame duck session at the State House, and we're pressing very hard on the Conneaut Creek Dredge Material Facility for the second round of capitalization that they were to provide in March that was delayed due to the pandemic. We anticipate that this session is going to run all the way up to the week prior to Christmas, so possibly even a couple days prior to Christmas. So we're seeing it's being kept somewhat quiet. We're hearing different things in and out of that state capital bill, but we will continue to press for the needs for the city of Conneaut on that and a number of other fronts. So there are really three budgets that come together. There's a state Senate budget, the state House budget, and the governor's budget, and then they all kind of commingle and we see what comes out the other side. So we continue to work on this, and hopefully we can prevail on a couple of these items. We also are working with the other ports in the state of Ohio and lobbying all of the elected representatives, including Lorain, Fairport Harbor, which is in Lake County, and the city of Ashtabula and the Ashtabula Port Authority for the Ashtabula Port. We're all ports that are going to have to come up with some sort of solution there, and continued state funding for the Healthy Lake Erie initiative is important. Trying to jump down through here. So it's that time of year again where we continue to have this kind of colder weather than warmer weather. We see a lot of potholes. I would remind people, if there is a pothole that's problematic, call Public Works. It will be addressed. It goes on a list when it is able to be addressed. So obviously in the order of priority, if something's hazardous, please call us immediately and let us know. We do keep a comprehensive list of everybody that calls and any problems that are reported that are called, so we can manage those lists and tests. Also for the southern roads, it's going to be the same thing. When we hit this kind of the roller coaster between 40, 50 degree weather and freezing weather, that's when we tend to have issues. If you are seeing issues, please call. Understand that we can't work on the roads necessarily every day if the weather conditions won't allow us to grade. But go ahead and let them know what the issue is. I just trying to remind people, if there's a problem, report it. We have 468 lane miles of roads. They don't drive them all every day, so if there is an issue, letting them know is the first step, and I promise they'll get out there and handle it. Our water filtration and distribution system, we had our Ohio EPA survey and inspection. There's an online digital component this year, and then there's a physical site survey. I do want to let you know that there were a couple things, particularly with the Clark Street water tower, that I anticipate hearing about from the EPA. That is our oldest tower. It does need some possible either replacement or renovation work. Either would be extensive, but it's getting to the point where it's going to come up to where we're going to need to address it in the next several years. And then there's also likely some issues that they will notify us of with our asset management plan, where they'd like to see some more robust asset management planning. So I know that's what Rich Neubauer, our superintendent, has told me about. We'll see their full notice when it comes to us. Other than those two issues, it was a fairly clean survey and inspection. We'll wait on the final notice. But they spent about a week on that survey and inspection with the Ohio EPA. And the gas lease, I know it's our tabled ordinance. I would recommend you leave it on the table. Kyle and I had a productive call with legal counsel over the gas lease and talking about some alternatives that are giving them some heartburn. So when we get down to those final terms, it would probably be worth us to meet in an economic development committee meeting and review it first. But so far we haven't seen their final response to our comments yet. So we're just having some verbal discussions at this point. So I'm not going to have a draft for you this week, and most likely not next week either. So this will go into 2021, which is longer than we want it to be, but it is moving forward. The last thing I wanted to mention is we will likely, I did not see it issued today by Nichelle, but we will likely get another notice from the Ohio Department of Health for our wastewater monitoring system. We have seen a large increase in the RNA numbers present in the wastewater. By comparison, November 12th was our previous high at about 1.5 parts per million, and we just charted about a 3.25 parts per million. I would encourage people, there's a link on the front page of the website. They've also updated it with some bar charts and some overlay with number of daily reported cases. So we expect to see a significant increase here in the next week or two in COVID cases within Conneaut as well as countywide. That's all I have, unless there are any questions from council.
Does council have any questions for city manager? I just had one follow-up on the potholes. We discussed software for the website. Is that still on track for 2021 or
So
back burner?
that was something when we did the website upgrades, and that was ordered, I believe, the week after Thanksgiving. Once council did the appropriations, the revised appropriation for the CARES Act dollars. When we did that for the courts, that some of that money was inclusive of the website, and it will allow an online tracking system where you can report it online. It will have a little certificate that goes with it. It will email the person back with a status and a status update of not just potholes, but really any improper condition within the city. It will also allow us to intake other things on a contactless basis, such as zoning permits. You can file your permit online, and then you would also be able to pay for it online, including other inspections and other services, just to reduce the number of people in the building. So they're working on it. We expect to roll that out in early 21.
Okay, very good. Yes, that's good news. Positive for the public for sure to be able to do that and track when they have complaints. So. Okay, if there's nothing else for the city manager, move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams,
I have no report this evening.
because you'll be talking about other things, right? Okay, move on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
I've been very busy drafting and negotiating different contracts. First, one Mr. Hockaday spoke about regarding the gas tap. Spent a lot of time on that. We're dealing also with the dredge project issues. I've been dealing with the Port Authority and the city on the transient dock development and pre-designed agreement that is floating around. I've been working with Brian Bidwell and the sewer department developing drainage easements for neighborhoods in the North Conneaut area, and some other economic development projects. So,
Okay. Any questions for the law director? Okay, if now we'll move on to committee reports. Does anybody have a committee report?
Mr. Arcaro, I have a report.
Mr. Kozeski?
Thank you. On November 30th, the Public Safety Committee met with City Manager Hockaday and with the Fire Chief, Steve Lee, to discuss the 2021 Fire Department budget. Been an extensive discussion regarding the new radio system for the fire department, which would be a Marks radio system, a statewide system. We also had discussion on replacing a raft that was damaged previously, paving of the Station 3 parking lot, and also to increase the wages of the part-time utility firefighters, to bring them up, their wages up to that of a starting pay of a full-time firefighter. And that's, we agreed that we should do that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, if now, we'll move on to liaison reports. Okay, hearing none. Move on to our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. And we have, we already spoke about the one on the table, so we'll move on to our first reading ordinances, and we have 8 that we need to consider for this evening. And we will begin with ordinance 10320.
An ordinance to create Fund 325 paddle grant for the purpose of accounting for the receipts and disbursements related to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources paddling enhancement grant.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
This is the ODNR grant that we were awarded earlier this fall. We just have to create a fund in order to track those expenses.
Okay, is there any questions or discussion on ordinance 10320? Not? Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Hockaday, are we under a time constraint for, I think, no, we already submitted this grant, correct?
We submitted the grant and we accepted the grant. It's just in order for us to appropriate it in 2021, we actually have to create the fund so it can be audited in the future.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments on ordinance 10320? Now, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 103-20.
So motion to waive the three reading rule on ordinance 10320. Is there a second?
A second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 103-20.
Motion to act on ordinance 10320. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10320 is passed. Move on to ordinance 10420.
An ordinance to create Fund 326 OCJS grant for the purpose of accounting for the receipts and disbursements related to the Ohio Department of Public Safety Office of Criminal Justice Services subgrant awarded to the Conneaut Municipal Court for OCSS software purchase and implementation.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
This is a grant Judge Irochi applied for. We're just creating the funds so we can account for those. I believe he is going to spend this year, so I think it's $19,805. Once council creates the fund, I'll certify that revenue to the county so it's available for appropriation. Because it's a federal grant, it's going to be deemed appropriated. You don't have to create a separate appropriation for it, so he'll be able to immediately use that once the funds are certified.
Okay. Any questions from the Finance Director on ordinance 10420? If not, there's a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion to waive the three reading rule on ordinance 104-20.
There's a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 104-20. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 104-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 104-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10420 is passed. Move on to ordinance 10520.
An ordinance to amend the 2020 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached to marked Exhibit A.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Okay, there are a few items on here that needed adjustment. One is the janitorial services for the cleaning of City Hall. We need additional $4,600. That's actually part of the November and then the December invoice. I believe the monthly payment's around $3,300 per month. The street lighting we've discussed extensively. The $12,000 is in there for in the general fund. Depending on how much the street lighting fund can support, we're appropriating $9,500 in the street lighting fund. Any shortfall or any revenue that isn't collected as estimated will fall back on that $12,000 for the in the general fund. The loan interest on Route 20 West Engineering. This was the $420,000 note that we issued for the engineering of Route 20 West. We will begin payments next year, starting in December, of about $44,000 per year, but there was a small interest payment that accrued this year that needs to be paid. So that is a new line item. It's also in your budget. It's the same number, but we had to actually create it this year in order to make that interest payment. And then transfers, the Corona Relief Fund. There's $62,883.87. That's the final distribution from the Corona Relief Funds. The total that we received from the Corona Fund was $1,154,797.88. We're going to have to appropriate this, and then in the next ordinance, we'll actually transfer that once it's appropriated into the general fund. And then the last one is, I just found out about this today. We were talking to Mr. Neubauer. He was short on his chemical line item for aluminum sulfate. He needs about an additional $5,500. We normally appropriate between $60,000 and $70,000 per year, depending. We had $65,000 appropriated this year, but that is the additional amount that he needs to get through the end of the year. So in total, appropriations across all funds is $95,741.54.
Okay. Mr. Hockaday, could you give a brief synopsis on what exactly goes into the street lighting fund as far as what it's used for?
Yes, so the street lighting fund will pay for all the ambient overhead street illumination. It also includes any of the tariffs associated with signals, those traffic signals which everybody in the city uses, flashing lights, warning lights, curve ahead lights, any other electrically connected, are all assembled under the same bills and tariffs to the city. We have also paid for new capital items related to that. That includes repair and maintenance of city-owned lighting structures, such as the ones in the underpass, downtown, the harbor area, and on the bridges that are city-owned and city-repaired. There are some additional line items within Public Works that sometimes carry some of those, a portion of those expenses, but it's kind of an either or. Both funds pay for some of those expenses. So any of the First Energy or Cobra Head style lamps, those associated charges, whether it's repair, replacement, or tariff charge for their utilization, are included.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments regarding this budget amendment? Ordinance 10520. If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'd like to motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 105-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 10520. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Mosio. Yes.
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 Yes, although I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm not sure what happened with the audio from there.
I say yes, but I'm not hearing anyone else besides council that are on Zoom.
Yeah, we lost Pam.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I just heard Terry.
Yeah, I just heard Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Pop that mic up to her. No, yeah.
Maybe it's this one. That one isn't lit. Let's do this.
Can't hear us.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. So where are we at?
Okay.
Did we suspend?
We finished suspending, yes.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Is Mr. Emery.
Or Mr. Emery. Excuse me. You looked this way.
Oh,
Well, I would like to proceed and move forward with ordinance 104-20.
Okay, there's a motion to,
Sorry, 105-20.
there's a motion to act on ordinance 10520. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Kozeski.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10520 is passed. Move on to ordinance 10620.
An ordinance to transfer a total of $62,883.87 from 259-901-59300 transfers within the Coronavirus Relief Fund to 101-931-49300 transfers within the General Fund.
Okay, Mr. Williams, would you like to say anything else?
No, it's just transferring the cash that we've appropriated in that fund so we can get it back in the general fund. Just as a reminder, we're reimbursing for payroll-related expenses out of the general fund or any other fund that is safety-related. So it would be everything that's related for police, fire, corrections, dispatching, and also the health department. So we're just moving that money into the general fund. The money's already been expended, and this is basically a reimbursement at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on ordinance 10620? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on 106-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 10620. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McVoy?
yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 106-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 10620. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mrs. McVoy?
yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10620 has passed. Move on to ordinance 10720.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to enter into master lease agreement number 15166 with Huntington Public Capital Corporation for the financing of a Case 621G wheel loader in the amount of $153,671.49 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, we've talked about this before. Mr. Hockaday or Mr. Williams, you guys want to add anything else?
It's a lease purchase for 7 years. It's 2.47%. Our annual payments, I think, are around $24,000. The interest and principal payments on this, what we did, and we've talked about this before, but just as a reminder, the capital improvement fund that we can use to purchase any type of equipment or anything that can be capitalized, we actually converted that fund into also a debt retirement fund years ago in order to pay for additional equipment. This year we're doing, even after that debt was paid off, then it just went back to being a capital improvement fund. We're now using a portion of those funds, which is about $45,000 per year. We're taking that $24,000 and we're in the 2021 budget on page 21 under the estimated expenses under capital improvement. I've reestablished those line items for principal and interest payments to repay this. So about half of the revenue out of that fund will be going to service the debt, but it's for equipment. So it's really semantics at this point. It's still to purchase equipment. We're just, extending the payment over a 7-year period for the purchase of that equipment. But I just wanted to let you know that in case you were interested. And then also one other thing, the $290,000, as I mentioned earlier, the unexpended balance, the negative in the Public Works Department. Once this is signed, that will be reduced by the $153,000 when we receive those proceeds.
Okay. And Mr. Hockaday, when do you anticipate this coming into service?
We've received it already.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've actually paid for this too. We paid for it on Friday. As long as we issue this lease we can reimburse ourselves within 60 days and still keep that tax exempt status.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments on ordinance 10720? Okay, if not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to declare ordinance 107-20 an emergency.
Okay, there's a motion to declare ordinance 10720 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
Second by Mr. Mozio.
One moment. Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
This time I'd like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 107-20.
So motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 10720. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 107-20, please.
So motion to act on ordinance 10720. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10720 has passed. Move on to ordinance 10820.
An ordinance to authorize payment to the following contractor in the amount listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 5705.41D1 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Okay, this is related to the Lake Road storm sewer. Our original contract with Severino Construction was $196,165.59, which was substantially below the engineer's original estimate. I believe they encountered some issues over there, and so we had a change order of $21,698, which council had approved. When we received the final pay estimate, it had an additional change order, or a total of $29,649. Council had originally approved the change order of $21,698. So that left an additional $7,951 that needed to be paid on that pay estimate. Because of this code section was over $3,000, and there wasn't an encumbrance to cover that because it was an additional change order, then council has to authorize it. So that's all this is. The vast majority of this project was covered under grant loan combination through the Ohio Public Works Commission, and also through the SIB loan, which that's the $130,500 that we're waiting on receiving before the end of the year.
Okay. Any questions or comments on ordinance 10820? Now, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, I'll declare ordinance 108-20 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 10820 an emergency. Is there a second?
I second.
I didn't catch the second. Who was the
I
second?
second.
Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the emergency has been declared.
like to make a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 108-20.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 10820. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to make a motion to act on ordinance 108-20.
A motion to act on ordinance 10820. Is there a second?
I second.
By Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
The ordinance 10820 has passed. We go on to ordinance 10920.
An ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance number 21-04 to set the maximum rates of pay effective as of January 1, 2021 for said positions as further described in section 1 below and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockey.
So these are administrative unclassified salaries of various department heads and other unclassified staff, such as assistants throughout various departments. This represents a 2% cost.
Your audio went out, Mr. Hockaday.
Did you catch any of that or no?
I didn't.
No.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So this represents the discussed amendment of 2% of all the unclassified staff, which includes of department heads and other assistants throughout the department. So a couple notable changes from that is we added, I believe we made it plural, correct? Administrative assistant to the law director. And we added assistant law director. They are I'm sorry. Where did you add it, John?
It should, how we discussed that proposed arrangement with the planning and zoning is that we were going to set the pay at the maximum rate of pay as the administrative assistant to the law director, because they're going to be splitting their time, that person, so that will be the position from which we will pay that person. The city manager will determine where to place that person, but that's the maximum rate of pay.
Coming out of
The administrative assistant to the law director.
I thought we were going to notate or pluralize that. So
Yeah, that's,
we just wanted to indicate that will be the one that we discussed with the housing and zoning. It'll be shared, and it'll be shared at that rate, just so council is aware of that. And other than that, it represents a 2% increase.
Okay, is everybody clear on that? Are there any questions? Okay, if not, is there a motion to proceed?
I make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule in ordinance 109-20.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 10920. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I think we have to declare an emergency first.
No, it's not an emergency ordinance.
No?
No.
Okay, sorry. Oh, not. I'm sorry, I misread. Excuse me.
I didn't catch the second. Who was the second?
Rick Gaw.
Mr. Goss, second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Kozowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I move we act on 109-20.
It's a motion to act on ordinance 10920. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 10920 has passed. Move on to ordinance 11020.
An ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance number 133-07, establishing the maximum rates of pay for the following part-time positions as further described in section 1 below, effective January 1, 2021, and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
These represent the pay rates for all of our part-time and assistant laborers. The notable correction, as was discussed in the Public Safety Committee on November 30th in the subsequent budget meeting, there are 3 of them that have been modified in accordance with those decisions. That would be the part-time corrections officer, utility part-time firefighters, and part-time dispatchers. Those were adjusted to an hourly rate of pay that is commensurate with a full-time person starting position. It should also be noted that the part-time corrections officer, while it is listed, there is no such position here with the city currently in terms of there are no filled part-time corrections officers. That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions or comments on ordinance 11020? Okay, if not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'd like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 110-20.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 110-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to motion to act on ordinance 110-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 110-20. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro?
Abstain?
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 110-20 is passed. That concludes our ordinances for this evening. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business.
Mr. Arcaro, I have, excuse me, just a couple things. I had the opportunity over the weekend to visit municipal court and see the renovations that have been done there. And it looks very nice, even with the upgrades for COVID and everything that's been done in there. It looked really, really good. And I also got to take a look at the thermo scanner, which is now at the entrance to City Hall. So I haven't seen that in operation yet, but I want to thank Judge Irochi for giving me that opportunity and being able to take a look at what he's done to improve the court in the courtroom. And also we want to thank the city manager and the finance director, law director, and all the city staff for all their hard work on the budget this year.
Okay. Anybody else for miscellaneous business? Okay, I too would like to reiterate to the administrative staff on our appreciation for the budget and also council for enduring all these budget sessions that you've been zooming in on. And also, I'd just like to, once again, I know this is getting old, but just remind the public that we are nowhere near out of this pandemic yet. And as Mr. Hockaday indicated, our numbers are going up, will be going up with what we've seen at the wastewater treatment plant. So continue to be vigilant, wear your mask, do what you need to do so we can get out of this. You know, the vaccine is rolling out today, but it's going to be a while before it's widely available, so. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned for